Howdy, soldiers. I'm rocking a big brow today because we all know the bigger the brow, the closer to God. Happy March, everybody. I hope you're having a good start to the month. I am so caffeinated that I feel like I'm about to blast off, so I decided to channel that energy into my February Reads wrap-up. If you're new here, you have to know that I am an all feelings all the time ass bitch, and I was in my feelings this month. Read some older stuff, read some newer stuff, read a short story. It's like I don't even know who I am anymore. And I read a novella that I have a lot of things to yell about with. So, without further ado, we're gonna keep this intro nice and short. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in while we go over the 7 books that I managed to read in February. Oh my god, how is my camera battery already dying? And we're back. God, I hope that's not a bad omen for today's video. We might as well start off with the big boy. It's Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. If you've been here for literally any amount of time, this should not be a surprise to you. Do you know how much trauma you could fit in this baby? Chain of Thorns is the third and final of her Last Hours trilogy, which is the Edwardian Shadowhunter world. And as a long time and very obvious Shadowhunter stan, I had some major ups and downs with this one. On the plus side, I love the Last Hours trilogy because we get to see the Shadowhunters in direct relation to their parents, and their parents are characters that we've seen before. We get to see how the family dynamics of this world work. The love triangle politics and the world building is absolutely top shelf. And once again, the gays are holding down the fort. However, I didn't love the way that she ended the trilogy, and there was actually a major character death in here that I very heavily disagreed with because it served absolutely no purpose in the plot line. So I was a bit salty about that because I'm like, come on, man, like, you know how to write impactful character deaths, you know how to write these kind of family dynamics, and she kind of just slipped in a few places. So as the ending to a series, it was kind of just okay. That being said, I did feel the entire range of human emotions. Like, here's a picture of me crying when I finished it, and most of the book was just me making a series of very high-pitched noises. So like A+ for nostalgia purposes, but maybe like a B- for actual plot execution. Damn, I have to like shake my wrist out after holding that one. She's a hefty lady. Keeping to my historical fiction rampage this month. Or I guess it's like technically only 2, so it's like a small, tiny rampage. A rampage-let, I don't know. I finally read the gay Regency romance that was A Lady for a Duke by Lexis Hall. Particularly my friend Reese of Reese Reads was all about this trans Regency romance, and I was like, alright, you know what? It's taken me like 7 months to freaking read the thing, but I guess better late than never. Where our main character Viola used to have to live as a man. How embarrassing. But after being sent to the Battle of Waterloo, she took advantage of the fact that a lot of people thought she was dead and rebranded herself and started living as her true authentic self in society. But because of that, she had to give up her old life and her title and her money and also her best friend who thought that she was dead on the battlefield. But years later, when she and Gracewood's family finally reconnect, she finds herself still drawn to him and he to her, but she's not as sure if she should tell him her secret. I will give Alexis Hall that this had one of the most impressive depictions of PTSD and war and addiction that I have ever read. There's this big gothic mansion and a fancy brothel and a sword fight. Like, what more could you need from this book? The pacing's a little weird, like it definitely runs and then kind of drags a bit, and the characters themselves were they were simping for each other like way too fast. Then again, I'm really not up to date on my Regency romance etiquette, so I'm not sure if that's like genre specific or if it was just this book. They're also great at writing intimacy, and I also really liked how the beauty of a person is in their details. So overall, it's a little bumpy, but as a touchstone book for trans rep in media, especially in historical media, I thought it was really well done. Next up is a book that was in my Death Drop Extreme Elimination TBR video from a couple weeks ago, and this one made the cut, and I'm so glad that I finally read it, and that was The Inheritance of Arcadia Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This was sent to me by Book of the Month like forever ago, so sorry about that, y'all. But it is a sweeping magic realism story all about the messiness of magic and the strength of family, which follows the Montoya family, where the matriarch, Arcadia Divina, has called all of her relatives to come collect their inheritance, and when they get to the magical cabin that she lives in the middle of nowhere, she herself is turning into a tree, which, like, I get it. It happens sometimes. And it turns out that a curse on their family is now coming to fruition. A bunch of her descendants now have to figure out what's going on, who's after them, and their magic, all while tracing back the life of their very secretive magical grandmother. And if that wasn't cool enough, well, baby, guess what? There's more. There's transcontinental travel. There's magical circus flashbacks. There's casual necromancy. There's ripping holes in the fabric of space-time. This also has writing that is very akin to The 10,000 Doors of January or The Starless Sea, or another book that we're going to talk about shortly that I happen to love. So if you like that kind of magical extended metaphor type writing, you're gonna love this. Now, to just give everyone a little break. Like, we've been talking about books that were 400 pages, 500 pages, 800 pages, and as somebody who literally read all those pages, I can tell you it is exhausting, and sometimes you just want a little pick-me-up. You just want a little itty bitty novella to just satisfy the need to read. And so this month I read Conspirator by Veronica Roth. Okay, maybe don't cover the entire title, Rachel. Tor sent me Veronica Roth's latest, which is a dystopian retelling of the Greek tragedy Antigone. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, where's the next flight to wherever the Tor headquarters are? Because I need to knock on some doors to get this. I've studied many Greek tragedies and I love Antigone. So I was so stoked for this, and I am so happy to say this is one of the best retellings I've ever read. It's a little Handmaid's Tale, it's a little Star Trek, it's a great new twist on genetics and procreation in dystopian societies with like really fucked up worlds. While I'm not going to explain the whole play, for context, I'm sure many of you know Oedipus and the Oedipus complex. Antigone is one of Oedipus's daughters. So in this world, if you want to have a baby, you have to go to the genetic library and pull genes from people who have already died and then get them like implanted in you. So if you are still alive and use your own body to recreate through regular sex, that's highly taboo, and it's said that your child won't have a soul, and that soullessness plays into why Antigone and her siblings are so ostracized. And then also the very famous scene of Antigone going to her brother and like trying to pull his body from the streets. It's such a cool twist, but also big yikes, because there is so much commentary on abortion rights in this. Oh my god, can we please never turn into this society? My biggest complaint is actually the ending, because like Antigone is a tragedy. It ends in tragic means, but I felt like this was a little less satisfying than the actual play. I just wanted it to be like 5 more pages, like just a smidge longer, just a scooch longer. But once again, Veronica Roth is flexing on all of us being the queen of dystopian fiction. So if you want her latest, I would highly recommend this. Before we get into my 2 favorites of the month, I need to yell about something. And I've already yelled about this on TikTok, so if you've seen it there, just pretend you haven't. Who, me, recycling content on multiple platforms? Sounds fake. My friend on TikTok, Sammy, aka Dogs Books Coffee, recommended me The Fae Queen's Captive by Sierra Simone. If you know Sierra Simone, like I do, I was expecting this to be kind of like a one-shot, smutty, lesbian fae novel. And instead, I got one of the coolest freaking fairy worlds that I've ever read. This is less than 200 pages, and I'm mad about it. Our main character is an archaeologist who's working in Scotland, and on Samhain, she gets herself kidnapped from this Standing Stone Circle and taken into the fairy realm, and then court politics, but then also like the Fae Queen's kind of hot, you know what I mean? This fairy realm is way too cool to be used as a standalone smutty novella world. Like, no. Ma'am, I need you to write an entire fantasy series on this, because the Fae Court is in this magical castle that has rooms that appear and disappear, and everything's lit by these iridescent glowing mushrooms. And this court is the court of stags. And you know me, I love bones and I love antlers. And there's a full antler throne, and the queen has this antler crown, and later in the book there's like a wild hunt that adorns themselves with antlers. Oh, and like salt is a big thing too, because humans have salt in their blood, and that's what makes them human. So the main character has to keep imbibing salt to make sure that she doesn't fall under the fairy glamour. And there's also all this tension in the court, because the queen is now only queen because her mother just got assassinated and her older brother wanted the throne. So there's like this sibling tension and rivalry. And then also those twins are the Night Glass twins, and they have pieces of their body that are see-through. So like you can see the queen's lungs through her back. And then there's this whole other subplot of like tithing and sacrifice, and how the fairies have to tithe in blood and magic to like make sure that the magic of their world stays intact. intact. Literally most of this book was me being like, oh my god, can you freaking have sex already? Hurry it up. Like, I want to go see what's happening in that weird room with like the magic trails that lead to it. Not saying that the sexy times were bad. Like, Sierra Simone, she knows what she's doing. However, I do feel like I was not delivered onto the deliverables that I was promised, because apparently the main character likes all this stuff. You're like, ooh, sexy. But then she never actually, like, gets any of it, or she gets, like, this much of it, so I was like, okay, missed opportunity there. Miss Simone, can you please turn this into a 3 to 7 book fantasy series? Because I would read the shit out of a new sexy fairy novel with a court like this. This is dope as hell. So maybe if all of us right here, right now, make a pact to peer pressure Sierra Simone into writing this series, I would be super appreciative. I don't really know how to give a good transition to this next book. So I'm just reminded of a time when I was like 7 or so, and I had just heard the phrase, speaking of, you know, whatever, but I didn't quite know how to use it. So I remember we were at my grandparents' house at a big table, and I wanted to talk about how we had just gotten some new chickens on my grandparents' farm, and the adults were talking about something, and then like when there was a lull, I went, so speaking of chickens, and like everyone lost their mind. My mom was like, were we speaking of chickens? I don't know. And I was like, I don't know. I just thought, I don't know how the world works yet. So speaking of cults, this next book was sent to me by the author, and it is a sick ass culty pantheon of gods in a military horror Italian inspired fantasy world, and that is Seven Faceless Saints by M.K. Love. Did you like my little throwing transition there? Wanna keep you engaged and keep things spicy? The city of Ambrasia is divided into those with magic, who are the disciples of the Seven Saints, and the magicless civilians, most of whom get conscripted to go fight in the Second War of Saints. Our character Rossana is a magical disciple of the Saint Patience, but she is actually in the temple to help dismantle it from the inside out. She's joined the rebellion, and she's trying to get revenge for her father having been killed in the Saintless War. And then there's Damien, who's head of Palazzo Security and is trying to prove himself to his general father, but he also is suffering from major PTSD from fighting in the Saintless War for the last 3 years. They used to be childhood friends, but then Damien got sent to the war front and Rossana's father was killed, and now 3 years later they are back in the same city, and they have to work together to solve a series of murders because there's something out there murdering disciples and doing something real fucking weird with their eyes. As much as I love the Saint Pantheon, this author is clapping back at religion, and she's going hard. There is such good development and exploration of PTSD and depression and anxiety, and then also like Roz not kind of being there to like fix Damien, and her basically calling him out all the time to like tell people his needs and like communicate properly and like go to therapy. This is a second chance romance that I don't hate. The pining was immaculate. Roz tops this man in a variety of ways, and just, I love her so much. Like, mommy? Sorry. And Damien is coming for Will Herondale's brand. Oh my god, I have not seen a man so in love since Clockwork Princess. I can tell this is her first novel, like there's a couple pacing inconsistencies and she drops some characters, but at the same time, I think this is a deeply impactful novel that just collides love and mental health and dark magic, and I cannot wait to read the sequel. And lastly, we're gonna cash in on that foreshadowing that I did earlier. We're going to pull Chekhov's gun, which Chekhov's Flower Bride. No. I got sent Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Rashi Chakshi by HarperCollins, and I can't wait to make this my entire personality. This is Mexican Gothic meets Inheritance of Arcadia Divina meets The Starless Sea, and if that's not a good enough pitch, I don't know what is. This is a sensuous, foreboding, unsettlingly dreamy story that tells the stories of the people close to the vicious and magical yet mysterious Indigo Maxwell Castaneda. Indigo is an heiress who marries a man who is never named in this book. He's just known as the bridegroom, which I love. I don't need to know a man's name. But her only caveat is that he never looks into her past. But when a death in her family brings her and her bridegroom to the house that she grew up in, he slowly unravels the secrets of her past, and then at the same time we get to see flashbacks to Indigo's best friend when they were growing up as children, and the weird wildness of their home and the magic of their family. This is whispering houses and magic on the wind and waking up with blood in your mouth. This is the horror of a fairy tale curse, but with the twisted reality of modernity. I was on edge the entire time I was reading this book because you're constantly getting new information and all of it is horrifying, but it also recontextualizes the Mad Queen type fairy tale character, which I thought was so cool, and then also like what lengths people, especially children, are willing to go to keep their fantasy worlds or to be able to go to a fantasy world. Like there's a lot of callbacks to Susan Pevensey from Narnia and how they're like, well, you don't want to be like Susan Pevensey, like not allowed into your fairy tale world again, don't you? This is a haunting novel all about obsession and magic, and while I know it's not going to be for everybody, I personally love this type of writing style. So as her first adult debut, I think she freaking nailed it. And I think that is that on that. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon, and as always, please leave down below what you read in February. Did you read any of these? Did you read anything else? Do you need to yell at me about anything? Because I need to yell with or at somebody about the Sierra Simone book. And you know what? Now that I've done that, I do feel better. And if you want to buy any of the books that I mentioned, I recently became an affiliate with Book Depository, so my link is down below. That is an affiliate link, so I will make a small kickback, but you don't feel any pressure. But if you do, you get a book and you get free worldwide shipping. So like, hey, that's pretty cool. And if you want to get my sweater, I'll leave my affiliate link for Inkwell Threads in the description as well. I am probably gonna go and lie down or something because, oh my god, standing for just this long, my back is not happy. And it's fully my own fault because yesterday I was hunched like a little gremlin over a bunch of fabric on my floor while I was cutting out pattern pieces because there's a new dress that I want to make. My head and my heart are saying ball gown, but my knees and my back are saying lie down. You know where to click to like the video. You know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!